Hello, and welcome to We've Got Books, and boy, do we ever. We are three authors: Anne Green, author of 37 books, Lana Newman Cruzy, author of 3 books, and James Yarbrough, author of 12 books and short stories. We are coming to you from the big sky country of the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, where we have 4 distinct seasons, all of which can occur within the same day. I'm Anne Green.
I'm Lana Newman Cruzy.
And I'm James Yarbrough.
We'll be your hosts for We've Got Books, and we're excited to be connecting with you. We are authors who delight in telling you about our newest books, as well as interviewing other exciting new and established Christian fiction writers about their books. Our goal is to introduce you to some great Christian fiction, to explore the books, and to discuss the craft of writing, and to have fun doing so. We'll focus on getting to know authors and discover why we write books, because backstories are fascinating. We'll discuss fiction of different genres: suspense, romance, historical, mystery, humor, women's fiction, and more. Have you ever read a sensational book and wondered about the author who wrote it? How the genre and storyline were chosen, the plot and vision, the characters created. We'll sit around the table chatting to get to know each author and how his book was created from a dream to reality. Also, because we are lovers of words and believe you are too, at times we will delve into interesting writing topics, such as figures of speech, idioms, alliteration, and cliches. So sit back and enjoy this ride into the literary world. Today, we're interviewing our colleague, James Yarbrough, known to friends as Jim, about a genre he particularly likes to write in: humor short stories. Interviewing him today will be Lana Newman Cruzy. Take it away, Lana.
Thank you. Jim, thanks for joining us at We've Got Books today.
Thank you for having me, Lana.
Jim, among other genres, you like to write humor, as Anne mentioned. Tell us a little about yourself and why and what you write in the humor category.
Thanks, Lana. I certainly will. Well, I'm a scientist by training and career, and after retiring from my primary profession, I decided to try my hand at writing, something I've been interested in doing since decades ago in high school. I bring my Christian faith into my writing and mine various bits of experiences throughout life to include in my stories. You know, characteristics of people I've met, memorable and special things that have happened to me. I also just conjure up totally fictional people or events and meld them in with those experiences. I try to make my fiction entertaining, positive, and clean, but also interesting and educational for the reader. I really enjoy writing humor short stories and have published 6 volumes of those so far. The stories are pretty short, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 words, so they are quick to read.
Short stories are a unique product, aren't they, Jim?
They certainly are. You have to move quickly to establish plot, setting, and characters. And in humor short stories, to get to the quirky, funny parts of the story. I like to develop memorable characters in these series of stories and surprise the reader with unique plots. And the great thing about books of short stories is if you don't like one story, it's pretty short, so it won't take much time to finish it and move on in the book to find a story you really like.
Your humor short stories have appealed to readers in the United States and other countries. What are the stories about?
Well, I think it's fair to describe my humor short stories as people-focused. They focus on funny, odd things about individuals. They have a lot of unexpected kind of facets to them, out of the ordinary, counterintuitive, quirky in a good way, I think, and hopefully creative and hilarious. The reader can be the judge of that. My humor really contains a lot of miscommunication, misdirection, misunderstanding, assumptions that aren't justified. Those are kind of part and parcel of my stories as well. But specifically, my humor short stories follow a prim and proper and maybe a little bit too prideful Christian psychologist named Dr. Greg Chambers. He's married to Sherry, and they have 2 children. He's a PhD with postdoctoral training and 20 years of experience. He's really a very smart dude. He's experienced, professional, highly regarded, and has his own practice. But like all of us, he has flaws. While he's a sincere and hardworking psychologist who's always there for his patients, he thinks a little too highly of his own abilities and goes off on some interesting tangents and jumps to conclusions. So he tends to forget the old adage that a person should take his job seriously, but not himself too much. And then there's Carol Kramer. Greg's fresh off the farm, very loud and opinionated female office assistant. Where Greg is normally a careful, ready, aim, fire kind of guy, Carol is more of a fire, fire, fire kind of lady. They are very, very different. I used some literary license in inventing a paraprofessional career for Carol. I call it licensed therapy assistant. There's no such thing. Greg sent her to school one night a week for 8 weeks for this training, and now she's so confident she has the ability not only to manage the office, but also to out-psychologize Greg. So she takes the lead in the office many times. In order to placate her, Greg allows her to sit in on a lot of his sessions with patients. And part of the fun of these stories is often she does outperform Greg.
So, Jim, the stories have this good-natured rivalry between Carol and Greg.
Well, sometimes it's not good-natured, and so it's sort of madcap. Greg professionally analyzes people, but Carol is very intuitive and makes all kinds of emotional snap decisions. This drives Greg totally crazy, particularly when he's wrong and she's right, which happens a lot. And back to you mentioning I have readers in foreign countries a minute ago. To that point, I would say, good day, mate, to my wonderful readers in Australia, if any happen to be listening to the podcast. For whatever reason, my Aussie friends read my humor stories at a rate much greater than their world population proportion. So thank you to friends down under.
Yes, thank you to those who are in Australia. Now, Jim, you've written a lot of short stories about Greg and Carol. How many? And can you give us some specific details about some of them?
Yes, thanks. So far, I've published 53 of these short stories, and in them, Greg and Carol deal with all kinds of seemingly normal day-to-day people who you might expect need to see a psychologist every once in a while. Only the patients seem normal until you get to the stories and discover they are not so normal. Their funny weirdnesses creep up on you. So you want to give you some looks into some of the stories, some teasers?
Yes, please. Teasers.
Okay. In my short story Workout, in my book Don't Make Me Laugh, there's this nice young lady who's very pleasant, but suffers from what Greg diagnoses as compulsive exercise disorder. This lady spends all her waking hours exercising, if you could believe that. She doesn't have a car because she jogs everywhere. She helps take the offering at her church by jogging around the sanctuary, thrusting the offering plate in people's faces. She even does jumping jacks, forward rolls, and handstands while she's in session with Greg. But she says she really, really wants to get her habit under control. How does Greg deal with her? Hint, Carol's got some really creative ideas. Or in the story You Said It, in my book What's So Funny, Greg has a patient who's an executive and has to give a lot of briefings. Well, this man sometimes, quite out of the blue, bizarrely inserts a nonsensical word or two while trying to say a normal sentence, such as, in our electronics business, we sold 54% more platinum switches and 37% more chocolate milkshakes this quarter. Yeah, well, the chocolate milkshakes thing doesn't fit. And the patient doesn't realize he says things like that. So I made up a name for this condition, too, called acute thought disorder. Greg concludes the only way this patient will be able to give his important oral reports without being fired is to be hypnotized. But Carol is absolutely scared to death of the weird colleague Greg calls in to do the hypnosis, and the story unfolds from there.
Wow, that's very creative, Jim. That's great. How about one more?
Okay, in another story, Greg has an idea to help some of his toughest patients by using cooking therapy to relax the patients. At least that's the theory. To lead the cooking therapy class, Greg employs Carol's fourth cousin, twice removed on her mother's side. This man, Jean Claude, happens to be a renowned French chef from Paris, or at least that's what he tells everybody. Read my short story, Half Baked, in the collection entitled What's So Funny, to see how all that turns out. A hint, it doesn't turn out very well.
Okay, Jim, you've hit the nail on the head. You know, I love Jean-Claude and I love Carol, so putting them together is great. Do you have other regularly occurring characters in these humor stories?
I do indeed, Lana. It's been fun creating quite the little odd community in these volumes of short stories, and there are some odd people. Characters like Carol's brother, Herman. He's a never-do-well who is always dreaming up ways to make a fast buck by taking advantage of people, mostly Greg. Greg is his easy mark. And then there's Harry Newman, the witty curmudgeon chairman emeritus of the County Psychologists Association, who never misses an opportunity to give Greg barbed advice. And then there's Daphne First. She's a maniacal investigative reporter for a local TV station who always is very suspicious of Greg and tries to tie him in knots on camera.
Great ideas again. How did you get the idea of stories about a Christian psychologist?
Well, I was looking for situations where I could highlight surprise humor. You know, you don't expect psychologists to be funny. The male ones seem to all have nice, neatly trimmed beards, smile wisely, and behave so studiously and mellow. Neither do you think a psychologist speaking with a patient to be a very funny situation, but instead maybe kind of a melancholy, structured, and helpful time. But given we live in a fallen world, not only crazy things happen, but everybody has fallen a little weird themselves. So there are going to be a lot of bizarre things that a psychologist will encounter and also think about when he's counseling a patient. I focus on some of these unusual things that can prove to be really very funny. And I write these stories in first person, Greg's point of view. So a lot of my dialogue is Greg thinking and debating with himself about whether he can believe the patients, what the patients are telling him, and then, what kind of advice to give them. Greg's mind is silently racing. This is really weird. Is she really that naive? Or these patients actually believe their 4-month-old baby can recite the Bible? Back to one of Greg's quirks, jumping to conclusions, some real lollapaloozas he jumps to. And that's part and parcel of my stories, too.
Faith-based humor is really pretty clever. Is it rare, too?
You don't see too much of it, so I believe it is. I do enjoy writing humor in an overall faith context, though. I think humor and Christianity are very compatible. There's been quite a bit of writing about humor in the Bible, and that people at all times, including first-century Christians, enjoyed good humor. Also, some theologians have written specifically about humor that Jesus illustrated during his ministry on earth. The wisdom literature certainly has positive references. There's several references from Proverbs that apply, I think. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine." 15:13, "A happy heart makes the face cheerful." 15:15, "The cheerful heart has a continual feast." And I like the G.K. Chesterton quip. Humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. Humor can often help break down barriers and establish positive relationships among people. And then, although not specifically faith-based, I like quite a bit the quote attributed to musician and comedian Victor Borge. "Laughter is the shortest distance between two people." So I think we need humor these days, even more than ever.
I so agree with you, Jim. Where can readers find your books?
Readers can find my books certainly at Amazon Books or at my website, JamesYarbroughAuthor.com. That's James Yarbrough, YARBROUGH, author, AUTHOR.com. And if you go to my website, you can sign up to receive my periodic newsletter. That's free. So please do that too. And for your information, my Dr. Greg Chambers volumes of humor short stories are entitled A Shriek's Christmas, What's the Meaning of This? You Can't Be Serious, What's So Funny? No Laughing Matter, and Don't Make Me Laugh. And my new short story collection, to be finished very soon, is tentatively entitled Have a Holly Jolly Session, Christmas Time with Dr. Greg Chambers.
Well, thank you, Jim and Lana. That's about all the time we have today. Please plan to join us next time when we introduce Lana Newman Cruzy. That's Cruzy, rhymes with doozy. And she is one. She writes romance, romantic comedy, and women's fiction. We will feature her novella, It's the Right Time for Love. You won't want to miss our next podcast fun. So join us here at Spotify and other places where you enjoy your podcast. We are so glad you joined us, and we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to your input about our podcasts, and we'll listen to your suggestions of authors you'd like to hear from. You can email us at we'vegotbooks33@gmail.com. That's WEVEGOTBOOKS 33@gmail.com. And you can find all the books we mention on Amazon. Look up the authors' names and the book they discussed. I'm Ann Green, and until we meet again, enjoy reading.